Resident Evil 7 Biohazard is one of the most successful examples of returning the series to its roots and bringing the survival horror genre to a modern level. Instead of making the player feel like an armed hero, the game puts them in the shoes of a defenseless human. Narrow corridors, dark rooms, and the constant sense of pursuit maintain tension from beginning to end. The first-person camera makes the fear more personal and suffocating. Ammo management and limited health items make every encounter risky. Unforgettable enemies like the Baker family don't just attack, they also exert psychological pressure. While the atmosphere changes as the game progresses, the level of fear never lets up. The graphics, sound design, and environmental details virtually ensnare the player within this decaying house. Resident Evil 7 stands out as one of the most powerful survival horror experiences of the modern age for those who want to take horror seriously again.
What is that?
Amnesia: The Dark Descent is considered one of the most effective examples of the survival horror genre thanks to its mind-altering atmosphere. The game places the player under constant threat from the moment they wake up in a dark, abandoned castle. There are no weapons, no combat. The only options are hiding, running, and maintaining your sanity. The sanity system disrupts the player's vision and control during prolonged periods in the dark or witnessing horrific events, further increasing the psychological pressure. Puzzles and exploration elements slow the pace while constantly ratcheting up the tension. The sound design and ambient details make the unknown a constant threat. Amnesia delivers an unforgettable experience that proves that fear doesn't just come from seeing monsters, but from fearing the very sight. Silent Hill 2 is a game that builds fear not through creatures, but through psychological pressure. The game tells the story of James, who arrives in a foggy town, and his experiences become increasingly disturbing. The horror here comes not from sudden scenes, but from the unease emanating from the environment. An eerie sense of loneliness constantly grips the player as they walk through the streets. Enemies are not random, but designed to connect to the story, each with their own unique meaning. As the game progresses, the challenge shifts from mere survival to the character's past and feelings of guilt. Silent Hill 2 is one of those rare games that plays more like a psychological drama than a horror game, one that lingers long after the impact wears off. Resident Evil 2 Remake is one of those rare games that manages to take a classic horror game and reinvent it with today's technology. The player tries to survive in a city completely devastated by a zombie outbreak, and every step carries its own risks. Ammunition is scarce, enemies are tough, and escape routes are often limited. This creates a constant sense of tension. One of the most memorable details is Mr. X. This character stalks you around the map, turning even moments of safety into nightmares. The high-quality graphics and use of lighting make dark areas seem even more menacing, while the sound design constantly evokes the imminent threat. Resident Evil 2 Remake offers a modern survival horror experience that manages to deliver suspense and helplessness without spoiling the fear with action.
Jesus! They're everywhere!
Alien Isolation is one of the rare survival horror franchises that truly puts the player in the role of the hunted. The player struggles to survive on a space station, almost defenseless. The biggest threat is the legendary xenomorph, with its artificial intelligence. The creature doesn't follow a fixed path. It reacts to the player's movements and actually learns and stalks its prey. Running, hiding, and distraction are the only means of survival. Ammunition is extremely limited, and most equipment offers only temporary solutions. The atmosphere is oppressive, with dark corridors, metallic sounds, and a constant sense of impending danger. Alien Isolation stands out as one of the most suspenseful examples of the genre, demonstrating just how effective fear can be thanks to its enemy AI and sound design. Alan Wake 2 stands out as a unique production that elevates the survival horror genre with its cinematic narrative and deep narrative. The game immerses the player in a dark, disturbing, and ever-changing world. This time, light mechanics are not just a weapon, but also a fundamental tool for survival. Using light at the right time to weaken enemies transforms combat into a more tactical one. The game's pace focuses on tension rather than action, with each chapter taking the story to a darker level. Exploration, environmental interaction, and puzzle elements constantly perpetuate the atmosphere of dread. The visual design and sound immerse the player in a horror film. Alan Wake 2 stands out as one of the most powerful examples of modern survival horror, delivering fear not only through creatures, but also through subconscious and psychological pressure.
Stolen his heart!
Outlast is a game changer that has left its mark on the survival horror genre by building its narrative on the powerlessness and helplessness of weapons. The player controls a journalist who enters a mental hospital armed only with a camera. No defense, no weapons. The only option is to run and hide. The night vision camera allows for visibility in dark areas, while battery management doubles the voltage. When the camera is off, the player is effectively blind. Hiding from enemies, hiding in closets, or escaping under beds are the only ways to survive. The sound design keeps the player constantly on edge with screams and sudden encounters. The storytelling is shaped by notes and documents gathered from the environment. Outlast deserves its place on lists as a game that takes control entirely from the player's hands and conveys the profound sense that fear arises from helplessness. Clock Tower is one of the classics that laid the foundations of the survival horror genre and inspired many of the mechanics we see today. The game takes the player beyond the typical action horror genre by placing them in the role of an unarmed young girl. The goal here isn't to fight, but to hide, escape, and survive. The setting is designed to create a constant sense of insecurity. Danger lurks behind every door. Scissorman, the game's iconic scissor-wielding killer, suddenly appears, keeping the player constantly on guard. Gameplay relies more on sound decision-making than reflexes. Deciding which door to escape through, where to hide, and when to act are crucial. The fixed camera angles create a cinematic atmosphere that heightens the tension. While the graphics fall short of today's standards, Clock Tower stands out as one of the few horror games that still manages to resonate with the sense of unease it evokes. Resident Evil has gone down in gaming history as one of the cornerstones that shaped the survival horror genre into its current form. Players are trapped in a dark mansion, struggling to survive with limited ammunition and health items. Fixed camera angles and narrow corridors create a constant sense of unease. Engaging every zombie isn't possible. Escape and conserve resources are often the best option. Inventory management is a crucial element of the game, and a single wrong decision can lead to major problems down the road. Puzzles masterfully balance the pace of the game while reinforcing the sense of discovery. The story unfolds gradually through documentation and environmental details. With its focus on survival over action, Resident Evil stands out as a masterpiece that teaches the true meaning of fear. Silent Hill is one of those legendary games that transforms the survival horror genre from mere frightening to a psychological nightmare. With its dark streets, dense fog-shrouded town, and disturbing sound design, the game constantly puts the player in a state of unease. The horror here is driven more by the unknown and atmosphere than by sudden jump scares. A radio system that warns of approaching creatures makes every step tense. The combat mechanics are deliberately cumbersome. Ammunition is limited, and the player isn't forced to engage in every encounter. This makes evasion and planning crucial. The storytelling is presented in fragments, constantly forcing the player to theorize. Silent Hill stands out as one of the most profound and unforgettable experiences in the genre, fueling fear not only with the creatures themselves, but also with emotions like guilt, loss, and regret.